Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be having a look at the Masterverse 7-inch scaled Too Bad figure. Of course this is from the new Eternia line, so it's kind of just their way of being able to reinvent some characters and base them a little bit more on some of the original concept artwork. So of course we'll be having a look at all that and discussing the history of the character. Too Bad has long been one of my favorite Masters characters, so before we begin, please make sure that you subscribe and like the video, as those things really do help us out. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. Alright, looking at the packaging, Too Bad is looking really good, and of course we have the new Eternia logo. Here is the UPC code in case you're looking for this. It has been found at Target, and I doubt we'll be seeing it in too many other retail locations. And here's Too Bad on the side with a beautiful painting and an incredible one on the back. And I really like what they did with the bio here. It says, Too Bad, double-headed evil strategist, once the respective captains of competing mercenary ships, Tuvar and Badra both had their eyes on the legendary treasure of the Horde Prime. The treasure, however, came with a curse. It fused the rival captains together, who now terrorize New Eternia as Too Bad. With his combined knowledge, Too Bad could rule the universe if it weren't also for his combined ego. So I think this is a really cool direction to take it in. I really like paying special attention to these new Eternia bios because they're always full of neat tidbits and little changes, and I especially like this idea of the treasure of Horde Prime, so that's really interesting. Here's hoping we see Horde Prime in this line, right? And on the other side it just says, Too Bad. Surprise, surprise. I should also probably mention that this is one of the rare cases where I think that the deluxe Masterverse packaging actually works out pretty well, because it's so large that it's a really good fit for a giant character here like Too Bad. Usually it looks way too big for the figures that come in it and makes you kind of feel like you're not getting as good of a value, but this is definitely not the case here. And here he is, Too Bad. I don't know about you, but just first impressions are unbelievable on this guy. Just getting him out of the box, seeing just how big he really was, just looking at the ornate sculpting, the great paint work. This is by far the most impressive Masters figure that I have opened in forever. But you'll hear me say a lot more about why that's so throughout the review. Let's just get right into it with no time to lose. Let's look at this incredible sculpt. Getting a much better look here at Too Bad, you can see that absolutely no detail has been spared. Every little scale on this side and all of the kind of sinewy kind of texture for the skin on this side, it is incredible to see just the amount of artistry that has gone in to this sculpt work on such a massive figure, and we'll see later just how big this guy really is. It's not just the figure itself, but this runs throughout all of the accessories. It runs throughout the make of the figure, even things like the shield. All the way to the back. As you can see, this line isn't perfect, as if these two beings were indeed just fused together with some sort of magical force. Even the boots are incredibly well done. Things like the belt that's based on the original concept artwork for Too Bad, and here's a picture of that. That has been done very well, and I am just so mesmerized by everything that we're seeing here. It truly is some of Mattel's finest work that they have ever done. This is one of those times, and I've not been able to do this very often, to say that right now this version that's come out is truly the definitive version of this character, just sculpt wise. We'll get into other aspects later, but purely aesthetically, there is no better version of Too Bad. I could go on and on all day, but I mean, you see it right in front of you. You see all those incredible little details in the sculpt on the armor. You see the awesome shoulder pad sculpt, the incredible shield, just the fur of the loincloth, the boots, the holster, the gauntlets on the arms. There isn't anything, I think, that could have been done any better. The head sculpts are a perfect example of what this figure gets so right. Usually with these new Eternia figures, some folks have definitely had some misgivings about what they consider to be going too far away from the original, or maybe not far enough. Too Bad here is the perfect example of hitting a home run, getting it just almost exactly like the original, but just making it more detailed. And really the only thing here being very revisionist at all are some of the accessories and this removable belt. And that's based on concept artwork. So this really does feel as original and authentic to any version of Too Bad that you've seen. This could work for practically any of them, for a classic Too Bad, for a 2000X Too Bad, in classics Too Bad. There really isn't any limit as to what this could be considered, and this incredible sculpting just says it all. Aside from being just Mattel's magnum opus for their new Masters stuff, this is such a great way to start 2023, especially when there's so much doom and gloom out there about the line. But this really is a definitive statement that Masterverse is significant. Masterverse is valuable when it comes to the legacy of Masters of the Universe, and that Masterverse is a contender for giving us absolutely definitive versions of characters, even surpassing other previous versions, which we will get into later with one particular version in comparison. Not only that, but the articulation is exactly to the level that you would hope for and expect in 2023. Of course, both heads have the ability to turn all the way around. You can go way up and way down, and both of them have exactly the same capability. They have just enough room between each other where they can stare at each other either lovingly or menacingly, it depends, and can both turn around. And it's just the exact right amount of room so that they can both be looking at different things. And just using both of the heads in conjunction, these two beings fused as one can both have a lot of different sort of personality. You can put them in the middle of a display and have them each fighting one side, and I think that would be an incredible thing to do. Of course, over here at the arms, things are really, really solid. You can get them out to just about 90 degrees without feeling like you're straining anything, so that's pretty good. And of course it goes all the way around. They're very careful to make sure the shoulder pad with the spike doesn't really inhibit anything. He has a great double jointed elbow that works really well. Excellent hinges and rotations, of course, at the wrists, and those are interchangeable with alternate hands. There is no glove cut or anything. Over here we do have a diaphragm hinge, and that just moves very freely, and it really works well to get lots of different angles, so you can get way back and way forward. Not only that, you can get a side to side, and there's even a waist rotation right there. The legs, of course, if you keep the belt on, the holster might block it a little, but it bends, and so you can get perfect splits right there. You can easily get the legs to go way up, so he can get pretty much a perfect kick, so that's fantastic. Same for the other leg. You do get thigh cuts right there. You get a double jointed knee that works beautifully on both sides. You do get a boot rotation. You get a great hinge at the ankles, which are very strong. And you get excellent ankle rocker pivot on both sides. Now, the one thing I will say is this guy is massive, okay? So he's not going to be quite as simple as other Masters figures about trying to get him to stand perfectly all the time. But, I mean, that works pretty decently. But like you can see, he started to give right there. That is the one little Achilles heel, because, I mean, you have to allow for a little bit of difficulty. I mean, really, with a figure this massive and this detailed and top heavy, it's just kind of within the design that's going to happen. And you can see with a little bit of tinkering, I was able to get something a lot more workable. So it's really just a matter of kind of working on it and making sure he's in the right position, making sure that you're using that articulation to its fullest, especially the ankle rocker pivot. It works very well considering just how top heavy this guy is, and you have to allow for a little bit like that. Looking at Too Bad's accessories, you can see that he does include some very impressive items. One of them is this awesome axe that's made out of the bird or phoenix and the dragon that appears on his belt, which is from the original concept artwork. What a great idea to have this kind of dual weapon with each side being represented by the motif on the belt. To me, this is 10 times better than Too Bad's original classics accessory loadout, because I think this is cooler. I think the belt is cooler. I think the axe is cooler. And then you have this awesome kind of purpley mace right here, and it looks really good. You also get this incredible shield, which I am especially fond of, because they not only have included the kind of falcon and dragon motif on the front of it to tie that design together. You have this rough side of the shield and the smooth side with the circles over here and the squares over here. It's so cool that they've done all of this extra textural stuff with no paint whatsoever. This is just a texture thing on the sculpt, and it's done with kind of a shiny looking orangey plastic that almost has a gold tint to it. And it's extremely pleasing to the eye. It's the same kind of effect that's done with the harness up here. Just having that sculptural texturing to it, it's just really nice. And like I said, achieved without any kind of paint. And just the shadowing and the light does the detail work for you. There are instances, if companies are clever enough to where you don't have to load up something with a bunch of paint hits, you can make shadow and you can make lights do a lot of that work for you, because let's face it, he's already full of different paint hits and different things already going on with this figure. So I don't need it to have all that here. It already does what I need it to do with that material. Very nice. Now down here he does have a blaster pistol. He does have a holster. This is something kind of new for Too Bad. Kind of reminds me of the 87 movie blasters a little bit. He can hold this no problem as well. He doesn't have any trigger fingers, but I probably won't have Too Bad holding a gun very often. It seems a little weird to me. So I didn't have to have that accessory, but hey, sure, blaster pistol, why not, right? The belt itself is something we really need to talk about, because if you look at it, it's just so cool the way that they've incorporated that original kind of forgotten design. And I especially like how over here you've got the kind of diamond shapes, and over here you have the studs, and these are painted, of course, this kind of metallic-y green. Goes all the way to the back, and you have this little system back here where you just pull these little ridges through the belt and it tightens it up, and then it continues all the way around. Speaking of the back, we have an incredible mechanism to hold his club or the mace, I would assume, or the axe, and it's like this mouth. You can see it here, and it's like clamped down onto the weapon. That is incredible, and it's completely rotatable. Now this rotates a little freely for my taste, so sometimes when I'm posing it around it kind of woo, but I'm not sure which way you're intended to have it. I've just had it like this because I like the idea of being able to see the club behind him. Of course, this belt is removable, and I will remove it just so that you can see. Yes, you can get a much more classical look, and I really like this too, because rather than just doing the standard Master's belt, they did a cool thing where it almost looks like fangs or teeth that's coming down into a V shape there. So speaking of a classic look, let's go ahead and show you him in his most classic form, which I do think is important. I will say that the biggest problem I've had so far is, I want you to look at this. Yeah, by putting it in his hand, this axe right here, it has practically worn off most of this paint. I don't know exactly how they thought this was going to work, but this is pretty disappointing in an otherwise perfect figure. It completely rubs off. So if you plan on putting this in his hand, you know, let this be a little warning for you, because I didn't do anything crazy to put this in his hand. I didn't like destroy it or anything. It was solid. The paint was solid before I put it in there. So if you want to preserve this and keep it the way it is, don't put it in his hand, which is a real shame. But me, I don't really care, because I'm not going to see this part very much, and it kind of looks like battle damage or wear, but that's really no excuse. Mattel definitely should have had this sealed better and baked in a little bit better to where it shouldn't have rubbed off the way it did. And as you can see, it's flaking just as I go around on it there. I'll tell you what I might do. I'll tell you, I may just hit this with some acetone and just strip this right off. I really don't need the bandages painted on here. He's going to be holding it anyway, and that way I don't have to worry about flaking. An unfortunate thing, but you know, I think that that would be best, actually. Of course, his mace right here is a new addition, and thankfully the mace does not have any paint on those bandages down there. Sometimes it's better for things just to be solid plastic that have to be in such a tight grip. Of course, his shield, he needs that to maintain his classic look, even though it is emblazoned with some revisionist details from that original concept. And of course, we can take that right out of the mouth, and this is a look at the holster, the sheath here with the mouth. I think that's great. And this doesn't have any paint on its handle either, so that's a good thing. The only other thing that you could do would be to remove this right around the bicep. It's funny, I almost forgot to remove his shoulder pad because I forgot that wasn't in the classic design. You know you've done something right when you've taken some extra cues and put some things on that blends so perfectly that even a hardcore fan like me kind of just forgets for a minute that something wasn't even in the original. And here he is in a completely classic form. We have Too Bad. Now, I love it like this. I think it looks fantastic. This is a great look. However, I like it even more with the additional stuff. In particular, I am missing the extra orange shoulder pad right there. I think that it really does a lot to balance out the design and make it look nice. So I think that this is terrific. If you're an absolute classic look aficionado, you want it to look retro, this is great. I don't have to have it like this, so it speaks volumes about their good taste in the design process. And not every design change that they've made has been a good one in New Eternia, but this, yeah, this is one of the good ones. Of course, I should mention that he does include 2 alternative hands, which are just fists, and those hands are very easy to switch out, and the posts inside of them, the pegs, are incredibly thick, so I'm very thankful for that. All right, this is a great time to show you a comparison between he and the former champion of Too Baddom, which was, of course, Classics version. I think this comparison brings to light a couple of interesting things. I think for one, you're sort of left wondering, okay, why didn't they include this thing, which is the diamond kind of club that he's got. I'm not even sure there is a proper term for weapon like that. I think it's probably just completely fantasy. And you're probably thinking, oh yeah, that's a shame. And I agree. I think that's a little weird. I think they had a perfect opportunity to have combined this mace with this and have like a double-bladed weapon. And I thought, you know, that it even looks like it could just clip right in. But they didn't do that, and I think that's a real shame. So I think that's one of their only missed opportunities here. They didn't really replicate his original weapon, which is kind of odd considering that they usually are big on replicating that kind of thing. So I don't really know what that was about. I think that's the one thing that kind of hurts him, that keeps him from being able to replicate a classic Too Bad the way that you would want. However, I like this axe. To me, it feels a lot more like something Too Bad would use than this thing. But, you know, I'm no slave to the original vintage figure. I'm just being honest about what looks good. But seriously, they look really cool together. But guys, here's your new champion right here. The contest is over. This Classics was great for its day, and especially to have been a direct to market kind of, you know, working within the confines of the tooling that they had, and being able to reuse the arm and the leg there on one side and some of the scaly pieces on the other side. And a lot of great engineering work went into that, and it's still beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But I am sorry, there is simply no way you can look at these two and not realize that proportionally, size-wise, sculpting-wise, this one is where it's at. It really is. And usually the one thing you could say is, oh, well, you know, the paint's a lot better on the Classics figure. You could at least say that. Not so much here. This has almost the same amount of paint. The one thing is that this had a matte orange, and then they just, you know, put like glossy or kind of sparkly hits on each one of those little things that pop out like details. They don't do that here. This is all sparkly, but can you really tell much of a difference? Not really. It feels like more paint hits. It's a funny thing to say, but this is one of the only cases that we've seen where there is a sound victory for the Masterverse version. And this is something I alluded to in a video a long time ago that some of y'all may remember. I said, you know, I would love to see Masterverse start just owning Classics versions of figures. Even though Classics is my favorite toy line of all time, I would love to see Masterverse establish itself as definitive releases. I mean, for everyone, just something just knocks it out of the park, blows us away. And we are getting closer to a world where that is a possibility, where that doesn't seem so far-fetched thanks to this release. Of course, I definitely want to show him beside of his fellow new Eternia villains. Now, Beastman is sort of, I think, meant to be hunched over a little. So I think if I had Beastman just stand up, you know, full height, I think that they would be close. Too Bad is still a little bit taller. But these are two, I mean, absolute monsters of figures. And if you slept on this Beastman, you really need to grab this guy, especially if he's going for clearance at your Target, because I didn't give this guy enough attention upon his release because a lot of other people had already reviewed him and things. But this is pretty definitive right here. And just for giggles, here is a comparison with Hero, one of my other favorite Masterverse figures. And I think the heights look really good together. Of course, here we have standard Masterverse new Eternia He-Man, but I put on the movie classic He-Man head on there just because I think it looks really cool. It's like a happier He-Man. You might see an artwork, and these guys look great together. Keep in mind that Too Bad's stance is a little wide right now to help him stand because I do have him on, like, you know, foam, so it's a little harder. He is still quite a bit taller than He-Man, and that's huge. So this is easily a 7.5-inch figure, almost 8. Of course, we have Zodak with a C here, and you can see there's a big difference in size. Figure I didn't review yet, and it's new Eternia Stratos. And another, might I add, home run figure in their new Eternia line. So we'll get into that later, though. But it's cool to see them side by side. Here we got Jitsu, a figure that kind of gives you a very revisionist version of that character. And Jitsu looks really good beside of him, especially because Jitsu is a heroic character in New Eternia, which I think is cool. Why not change things up a little, right? I would have scoffed at Too Bad being a heroic character, but still. Battle Armor He-Man from New Eternia. I think these two look really good together. I'm a big defender of this Battle Armor He-Man. I think he really gets the job done. I think he's a great update and reversion. New Eternia Skeletor right here in more of his classic configuration. They look really good together and tells you a lot about the height of this guy. Here is my Kit Bash, whatever you want to call it, movie He-Man, because I'm using the old original Four Horsemen head with that new body that they've come out with in Masterverse. If you want this to be a Revelation Too Bad, or Netflix Too Bad, whatever you want to say, it looks really good together. Found this guy right here for about $7 or $8 at Ollie's discount store. And I picked up an extra Revelation He-Man, because why not? Here's one that a lot of people are going to be doing. They're going to be putting their 40th anniversary He-Man alongside of their Too Bads, probably to build out that classic display. And they look really good together. And yeah, I think the visual language here that they're both using really works well. And we could go on and on all day with comparisons, but you get the idea. We're going to gear him back up with his new Eternia garb. I really do think that these are improvements to him. And I really like this rubbery material that they used to do the shoulder pad, because it is such a tight fit and it's extremely stretchy. You've got a really easy to take on and off kind of extra accessory. If I could have one extra accessory from the new look, that's the one, just because I think it gives him a lot more breadth, and it kind of just makes him a lot more imposing. But I'm loving that belt because it's so much more interesting than just the old red belt. And just for fun, I think it might be interesting to take his axe and put it in the back. And here we have the amazing Too Bad all geared back up. And man, is he impressive. He also, it's worth pointing out, is able to hold every single one of his accessories, whether that's in a holster or in a hand or on a wrist, like his shield there. And I love this so much. They have done such an incredible job. I really couldn't have imagined them doing anything better with this release, aside from doing something different with the paint on the handle of the axe back there. I think that of course would have been much needed because of just the grip that his hands and the clamps and sheaths and things have on these items. It's going to strip that right off, and you can already see what was happening with mine. The other thing was to have more of a representation of that original weapon. Now for me it's not a big deal because I can easily, if I really wanted him to, just lend him the little classics version. It might look a little funny with him, but it would probably work. But I just don't care because this is incredible looking. This is the Masters figure you need to start the year off with. This is the one right here. It is $33.99, I think, $32.99 on Target's website. You may be watching this at a future point when somehow this guy is on sale, because a lot of these do tend to go on sale at Target. But guys, I think that this might be one of your more popular deluxe releases at Target. So in conclusion, I have to say Too Bad is pretty much everything that we have been wanting with these modern Masters releases. He has an insane amount of original sculpting. There, as a matter of fact, there isn't any single piece that's reused. This is a 100% new tool. He is massively huge. Not only is he incredibly tall at 7.5, almost 8 inches, but he is really, really wide as well. So you have a winner in just about every way that you can. The articulation, nothing has been compromised. Matter of fact, it's even better than a lot of Masterverse releases. The accessory count is huge. Yeah, there's a little bit of problems with the paint on the handle of the dragon axe back there. It's just one of those things. The revisionist details that they've added have actually improved the character, in my opinion. And everything is right with this Too Bad. Yeah, he's excellent. So what on earth are you waiting for? Order this guy as quick as you can. Get to Target. Start looking through the pegs. Because guys, this is the one you've been waiting for. If you have never bought a Masterverse figure before this one, this is your time to buy it. And as much as I love classics, you can go ahead and take this guy and you can kind of set him to the side a little. You can bring this guy into your classics collection, because why wouldn't you? This is the Too Bad to rule them all. So I am so excited for you to get your hands on him, and let me know what you think down below. And with that, be sure to subscribe and to like the video, as those things really do help us out. And of course, there's going to be a lot more Masterverse and Masters Universe Origins content coming your way very soon. With all that being said, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out. I'm actually having a harder time standing up the classics version. Nope. Oop.